Okay, so we're back again, book 24. So Chris, what's book 24?
Yeah, book 24 is one that you and I both have read and love. Actually, this is a book that I'm going to write a five-part reflection on in the future.
Oh,
I
really?
just,
Okay.
there's so much I wanted to say about it. This is when I started this whole journey. There was a few, like, kind of my top 5, 10 favorite books that I had so much to say but I didn't know how this whole journey was going to go. After where I was about 100 books into this journey, I thought, you know what? Like, this is my journey. I don't care. I got a lot to say. If certain books, I have a lot to
Mm-hmm.
say about, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna say a lot about it. So I've decided, for at least 5, maybe 6 books thus far, I'm gonna do like a 5-part reflection for each one of them. Unfortunately, I hadn't decided it at this time, which is why you see this one showing up as part 1 early on,
Okay.
but I haven't written the rest of them yet. But yeah, the book today for book number 24 is The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And here, it's one of your favorite books, so you go ahead and give the introduction if you want to.
Well, Black Swan, it's essentially what it suggests. It's a black swan. He's saying that Black Swan is something that is unpredictable and is not something that people would know about. That's the reason why I call Black Swan. It's one of those extremely, extremely rare events, but it also extremely impactful, meaning that it has a mass consequence. A Black Swan event is like COVID is a Black Swan event. No one expects it. No one ever have a glimpse of it, and it affects the whole world. This
Right.
is an exact example of a Black Swan event. So the book, the title, it's essentially that's a topic of what the author is trying to show you. The Black Swan event is something that no one can predict, so don't try to predict it. You just have to figure out other ways to cope with the things that will happen that you will never be inside of your spectrum of predictability.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. The only thing I'll add is I think as humans, just it's human nature for us to want to build consistency and order and try to make it predictable. I mean, that's just something that we do. And I think the thesis and philosophy that the author lives by is that you're trying to fit order and consistency and chaos and unpredictability. So you can go your whole life trying to keep things in order, but eventually at some point in time, the end of the bell curve is going to happen, and that's going to have way more impact than anything else. The entire time preceding it or the entire time following it was that
Right.
one tiny little event that
Right.
nobody saw coming, but we spent all of our time trying to keep everything in a
Yes.
nice tight little order.
Need to know there's things that we don't know, and so don't say that I see everything and I know everything and I can prepare for everything. And so that's a fool's errand, just because things like this. I mean, the definition of Black Swan is you don't know it, and it's major consequence.
Yeah.
And we as humanities try to take what we know and try to order and categorize these things into a more of a systematic, like, predictability. Right? We say, hey, because this happened, therefore it's likely to be that. So to take a stock prices, for example, if you say, hey, it's going up, so therefore it must continue to go up because there is an extrapolation of some sort. And this is where you're going to be full at the end somehow.
Right. Yeah, we think we know something, and really at the end of the day we don't.
Right. So
So
try not to be too much of a human nature, not all human nature.
correct. Yeah.
What the book is trying to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, instead of focusing on human nature, it's focused on, life nature, right? Life is random. Humans are a creation of the randomness, but at the same time, for some weird reason, we want to do the exact opposite of what life already brings. And
So
life brings
it's not
random and
human
chaos.
nature, but it's nature.
Exactly. So my reflection for the first reflection is for the Black Swan is going to be, I don't run for trains. And I know you know what that means, but we'll get to it. I'll explain kind of my thought process behind it. Going back to what we were talking about initially, the author Taleb is, I don't totally understand it, but his writing speaks to me, and I know it speaks to you as well. Like, there's just something about the way that he writes. It's kind of part philosophy, it's part science, it's part math, it's part art, it's part like autobiography. Whenever he writes, it's very real, it's very authentic, it's very coming from a place of love, but also at the same time he's so smart and he's thought through a lot of these things. There's something about this guy in particular that just, his voice is a voice that resonates with me and you as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say first and foremost, Black Swan is definitely one of the top 3 books that I've read during this whole entire year magical learning journey. I judge that based off of the impact that it's had on my life. I mean, I can't go a day in my life without thinking I don't know anything and that it's all random, really. And this is something that I learned when I went through this book. Specifically, this book holds a lot of serious weight for me because I read it during a time in my life when I was probably the most vulnerable, which was 2 or 3 months after we had lost Amelia. And I was still struggling to wrap my brain around why this happened to our family and why this happened to my daughter and why this happened just in general. You know, she was
Mm-hmm.
such a sweet, innocent child, and we lost her. And that brings a lot of questions into the world, right? Why did this happen? And I read this book, and I actually remember a couple days before I started this book, I was talking to my wife on one of our Amelia walks that we would take every night at the time that our daughter was born, for months and months after she had passed away. And we were talking about like God and like, why would they do something like this? And why did we get punished? Like, like what did she do wrong? Like, what did I do wrong? What did our daughter, none of us did anything to deserve this. And we thought we were doing what we were supposed to. And there's just a lot of questions. Right. And then
Mm-hmm.
a few weeks later, I ended up finishing this book, and I feel like that was God showing me a path forward to have a good conversation in my head with him about to answer the question that I was asking him. And really, to be honest with you, it's all random. Like, I didn't have any control over this. Amelia didn't have any control over this. My wife didn't have any control over this. Like, this is something that I don't know the outcome and what the impact will be at some point in my life, but I know that this was the most impactful event that's ever happened in my life thus far, and probably, will ever happen in my life. I mean, going forward. And that is by definition a black swan, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it is something that I will never forget. It is something that will have an immense amount it's changed my life, and it will always, like, I don't know for the good or for the bad. I don't know. Like, the point is I don't know. And I think this book
Yeah.
helped me to come to terms with, like, this was a totally random event that happened to my daughter and a totally random event that happened to our family. And that was a really important moment for myself on this whole journey. Specifically, when I was reading through this book, how it relates to the "I don't run for trains" comment. I know you and I love to talk about the 1,001 day turkey, where
Mm-hmm.
like your whole entire life, if you're a turkey, you get pampered, you get fed, you have free food, you have servants waiting on you, you got a house to live in. Maybe you're a free range turkey. Maybe you get to go gobble gobble with all your buddies every single day, and you live a life of leisure and you're having a great time. And then you think on the 999th day, everything is the same going into the 1,000th day. But then all of a sudden, the 1,001st day, it's Thanksgiving and your life ends. You're like, oh shit, how
Yeah,
did we not
because you've been conditioned to say every day is a great day. Everybody is worshiping this the turkey.
right.
These people worship turkeys like they're gods, right? But
Right.
unbeknownst to me, that's where I went wrong. And
Right.
so having the histories and pattern doesn't tell you the actual future. It's still unknown. You don't know that, because they just need to fatten you up so they can have a better Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
And you, on the other hand, thought otherwise.
Exactly. So I took that concept of the 1,001st day turkey, and the other big concept that I took away that I wanted to write about first and foremost with Black Swan was the concept of "I don't run for trains." With all that happened in my life, with all that happened to my daughter, with the whole concept of the 1,001st day turkey, life can change tomorrow, man. Like it did for my family. Like literally, we went to the doctor's office, everything was fine. 2 days later, our daughter was born at 22 weeks and 6 days old. And, the pandemic happened 2 days after that is when everything really kicked off then. And like our life has never been the same. I was 1,001st day turkey. And I don't want to live my life that way anymore again. I've learned my lesson. I don't run for trains, meaning I'm not going to put other people's agendas in front of mine. I'm going to try to live my life the way that I want to live my life every single day, which for me is living for two for my daughter, which means putting our values first and reflecting to the world what my daughter showed me of how to live a virtuous life and what values were really important to my life, and to reflect that going forward. And that's what I'm going to focus on for the rest of my life. So that's what "I don't run for trains" means for me. We have a limited time here. You miss that train, who cares? You don't get that promotion, who gives a shit? Maybe you meet the love of your life on the platform that you were waiting for the train. Maybe you on your walk back, you end up, I don't know, maybe the train derails. Like, I mean, like you just never know what's going to happen, tomorrow. So my goal for every single day, knowing the whole Black Swan concept, the 1,001st day turkey, I don't run for trains. Like it's all about just trying to live for now and live your values and express it as much as you can and try to live a virtuous life. And, that's really my main objective, I guess. So yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, Black Swan is one of my favorite book, and Nassim Nicholas Taleb has a series. He's called his series The Inserto, and there's 4 books in that series. We went through 2, which is the Fool by Randomness, and the Black Swan is 2 of them. So that particular book is, like I said, the series for me is contrarian, but it's true. I mean, it's accurate in terms of how I see the events unfold. And for the Black Swan book, what I've learned is don't rely on predictability, because that's your
Right.
fallacy. 1,000 day turkey, you are taking that predictability for granted, which kills you. It wipes you out. And so for us, is don't run for train. We don't need to rely on predictability. We just need to not use that as an anchor to live our life by. Because if you do, you will be the dinner. So for me, the book has the Black Swan in this particular book in this series kind of give that succinct point. The other books are kind of like the precursors and the successors of this book as well. So I highly recommend the other 3 books as well. But the author to me is one of my favorite guy in terms of how he thinks. Right, he's taking things that people don't see. Just like there are randomness, and we are using randomness to think that hey, we can stuff it into something we can understand and organize, and it turns out that's dangerous for us, because a lot of these things, if you rely on the Black Swan, you rely on what you know and ignore the Black Swan event, and you become wiped out. And when you wipe out, game's over. And that's, to me, that's a lesson I got from this book.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's funny. I talked to you about one of the books that I just finished reading was that Moonwalking with Einstein book.
Mhm.
We'll talk about later on down the road. But, in keeping with the concept that this whole journey is my memory palace, like these books are tied to specific memories of mine. And I specifically remember one day taking a walk while Felicia was pregnant with Luca. And I was walking through my neighborhood and I was talking to you on one of our nightly calls. And I was on a Zoom chat with you. And I remember distinctly saying to you, like, this book will F you up a little bit. Like, this book needs to be taken with precaution. Like, this book needs to be taken with like a grain of sand too, because there's a lot. Like, he's basically saying like nothing really matters really at the end of the day, because eventually some Black Swan's going to come and it'll wipe everything away you do every single day. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that was the message that he was saying in this book. I think you need to take this book like you should take anything in moderation. Don't go all in on it. This isn't like some existential crisis where it's like, it's all random. Who cares a shit? No, the whole message is exactly what you just said, is to anchor back down on what's really important to you every single day. Don't run for trains. Don't focus on predictability. Don't worry turkey at some point in time in their life. Like, it's about what you do today, and it's about what you do with your life going forward. Don't worry about the future. Don't live in the past. Like, what's going on today and how can you make that your best day ever, kind of thing. It's really what I think the heart of the message of this book is, even though it gets wrapped in a lot of kind of doom and gloomy a little bit. So I don't want anybody that ever does take on this book to ever think that this is like, I mean, honestly, to be fair, if I read this book and started talking to somebody about like, it's all random, man, it's all random, they'd be like, what is wrong with this dude? And that's not what I'm trying to say at all. I don't want anybody to read this book and then go, what is wrong with those two? Why do they like this guy so much? It's just the message. It's provocative. It gets you thinking. It's something that you can,
It's not something you can just pick up and read and understand, because you have to have some background. And a lot of people, sometimes they take it in only half the message and took it the wrong way.
right.
Because you say, well, if it's random, I don't need to do anything. Just I don't have to prepare, do anything like that. Well, he's just saying is don't be certain, because certainty is wrong. Because for the turkey 999th, right, the next day, right, he should be suspicious of the 1,000th day. He should be suspicious of the 1,001st day, so that when something comes, he can see the signal. He can see the omen. He can see the sign of people trying to kill him. Because if you are certain that you're going to be fed on 1,001st day, then you become wiped out. That means that it's end of life for you. So do not embrace certainty, embrace uncertainty, be suspicious. So that's the message of the whole book. But like I said, this Black Swan book isn't the first in the series,
No, it's not.
right?
And I,
So it's actually the third book in the series. So the Fool by Randomness, Skin in the Game, Black Swan, and the Anti Fragile is the series. And
right.
so there's a lot of concept in the Black Swan, even if you read by itself, it could confuse you in thinking something different. And that's why I agree with you. It could be dangerous if you only take it half the message.
Yeah, if you're reading one book a year, don't read this book. That's not I would not recommend that. It's like Thinking Fast and Slow too. If you're reading
Yeah,
one
but
book,
a great insight that it's basically the secrets of, I guess, nature, like we said before.
yeah, it's not human nature. It's nature.
It's
Yeah.
the secrets of nature. You need to know its secret so that you can.
This is a secret though. Like I think we all know this at our heart.
Well,
Like
we
just
we
spend
know
1,000
we
not
know it, but
seeing it,
we are basically conditioned to ignore it.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's not even we're conditioned. We build our life around ignoring it.
Because I'm prepared. I know what's going to happen. I see, and this thing is going to come next.
Yeah,
right?
I'm an expert. I get it. Like
we become so certain in our decisions.
Right.
And those decisions, when we're certain, we bet the house. Right.
Yeah. Challenge one quick thing though. Like, I don't think it's about being prepared for the 1,001st day. I think it's about enjoying the other 1,000 days better.
I think it's both. I don't think it's one of, it's about knowing the truth. Right. So
Right.
you know the truth. And you don't get, just so for example, if I know for certain that the stock's going to go up tomorrow, I'm going to bet everything. When you are certain about something, you are going to make a dangerous decisions. And to me, that is priority, because you can live to play another day. And so having certainty gives you the false sense of safety. That's the message. And then the second order thinking, if I can't escape this fate, what can I do? Then the enjoying of your life, the 1,000 days that you have, it's coming to play as well.
Yeah, I mean that's so. I'm just, as you know, I'm just naturally more, I think, just optimistic in general with how my outlook on life, just at a high level. Like just not saying you're not optimistic, but just I have just like an abnormal amount of optimism in life. So like my message is always going to go to the positive side of things, like with this, which is why I said this book can kind of mess with your head a little bit, like because it is, you could definitely take this and just like run around like Chicken Little, like the sky is falling, or something like that tomorrow. Like I don't think that is how I would interpret this message. I just want to make that clear to anybody that's listening to us talk about this book, even though the topic and the concepts of randomness inherently are filled with fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's how you should live your life, or that that's the message I feel like this is portraying. I don't know. I just wanted to make sure.
I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, having optimism is really good for your happiness.
Of course.
So embrace the uncertainty. Have an optimism of uncertainty and enjoying whatever you can enjoy is also positive.
Yeah. I mean, as you can see, this book is an awesome book to develop some great conversations out of, like it's a book that we could probably talk for hours about, which hopefully we have. I'll write the other 4 reflections that I want to write off this book at a high level. I know some of the topics are mediocre stand versus extremist stand, which is, we've kind of touched on a lot of these things already. Yeah. But either way, we get a lot more to come with Black Swan, but it's a great book. I know you and I would both recommend it, 2 thumbs up. So the question that we can leave with everybody on this particular conversation is, what Black Swan events have shaped your life? Because those are the most impactful events. So think back, right. Is it coronavirus? For me, it was losing my daughter. I think I would love to hear your Black Swan events actually, but like for me, it was obviously the whole event of losing my daughter. I don't know that coronavirus has really reshaped my life that much, to be honest with you personally.
Yeah, because yours is much overpowering over the COVID. Right. Because yours, having a daughter, first daughter that, is born premature and you have no idea, and just all the things that happens to you, it makes it so much more on a personal level, so much higher than what a COVID can even do to you.
Right. Yeah.
But to some people that, COVID is still there. It's still there. the Black Swan event. Maybe they lost their business, and so you have to do something else. So they completely changed the way they make a living today. Or they got sick, or have to be on a deathbed, or have a death scare, or whatever the case. And it changed the way they approach life and look at life.
Yeah.
So it's still a Black Swan event for a lot of people, and for you, it's still a Black Swan event, but it's just secondary to the one you have personally.
Yeah, I agree. I want to make sure another important point: a Black Swan event doesn't have to be some super negative thing either. It could be a positive Black Swan that takes 50 years to build.
Event,
like the internet,
something that you cannot predict, is unknown to everybody, and has a massive consequence.
The internet's a great example of a Black Swan event. Like nobody saw this coming. But it took 50 years to get here. But when it got here, and when it did what it did, eventually probably like oil may have been a Black Swan event, discovering oil, or electricity,
fire.
or fire. Yeah, like I mean, there's a lot of Black Swan events that are very positive.
You're talking about writings, language, and communications. I mean, go back all the way to the caveman, getting fire, be able to communicate, be able to write, people to put down thoughts, people to share them across, different brains.
Right.
These are Black Swan events.
God's probably the ultimate Black Swan event, right? Like the concept of God, and it forms religion and all this other stuff, and changed the way that we probably thought. I'm sure that humans 700,000 years ago wasn't talking about God the way that we talk about God, but eventually at some point in time that became a really important concept, and I don't know where it came from. So anyway, long story short, it doesn't all have to be 9/11s and COVIDs and losing a child or something like that either. Right. It could be positive Black Swan events. But yeah, I'd be curious, what are some of the most impactful Black Swan events in your life?
I guess my most impactful was, being forced to flee my own country. And because, my dad was not in the communist army, so he's on the opposite side. So after the war ended, he has to basically run from these enemies that's still trying to capture you. So that is basically a pivotal moment in my life where I don't see myself as regular, kids, and the way I think is shaped by just that, and have the opportunity and the fortunate to, go to America and start a new life here. To me, that's something that makes me who I am today. And so to me, that's the biggest Black Swan event I can tell you.
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, Vietnam changed a lot of people's lives, right? Like, I mean, the Vietnam War, changed. That was a Black Swan event, extreme. You know what I mean? I mean, that had a huge impact on your life. I mean, would you be in America? Would you have, 4 beautiful children? Would you, like doing what you're doing, today? Like,
no, my life would completely worse.
We don't know that, but maybe.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. It's just really interesting to think about. So for any listeners out there, something to think about. What's the Black Swan events that have shaped your life, and what do you think the impact's been on your life?
Yeah. So we will leave you with that.
Awesome.
All right.